And I'm here today just to speak about a little bit more about the campaigns for buffer zones up in Scotland. At the moment for the Scottish Parliament, there's a bill going through to impose national buffer zones around all healthcare settings, as well as a little bit about the solidarity between groups in this fight as well, because in order to win this and to face off and defeat this giant enemy, because yes, like the religious right is a small group, but it's a very powerful one at that, and in order for us to defeat them, we all need to come together. My name's Beth. I'm a trans woman. Basically that means I no longer identify with the sex or gender that I was assigned at birth. Pretty obvious that I'll never need an abortion. Not that you need to have that eligibility to defend someone's right to choose, but I would argue that it's incredibly important for trans people and the wider queer community to fight for body autonomy. In America, Ireland and Northern Ireland are only a recent handful of examples of where a trans community, but trans women in particular, has strongly came out in favour for the right to choose. And hopefully by the end of this talk, I can show you why it's a little bit obvious why that's the case. So my experience of activism around abortion rights dates back quite a bit. So in 2018, we started an occupation at the US conference, the National Union of Students. We occupied the stage in order to try and force the organisation to debate and pass policies around sex work and abortion rights. I've also been involved in marches in Ireland and Northern Ireland. I do counter demos outside my local health clinic that gets protested by not just religious preachers, but I would qualify them as hate preachers. I should probably say that if you are ever going to try and counter-test forced birthers outside your clinic, please talk to your health clinic first, get permission with them, see what they're comfortable with, because at the end of the day, you don't want to try and escalate what's happening right outside the doors of healthcare settings that offer abortion-related healthcare. When it was leaked, me and some other trans women, we held 2 demos outside the US Consulate in Edinburgh, and I also helped deal with some of the campaigns around the buffer zone consultation that happens in Scotland. Just this Saturday for Pride as well, we managed to get a radical bloc to deviate away from the main march. The main march, or Edinburgh Pride, basically signed up to have ridiculous sponsors in fossil fuels and made incredibly anti-trade union comments about the train strikes in RMT. So we thought it was very important to break away from that march. And first we went to the RMT picket line, which was incredibly good. And then we went to the US Consulate again to protest Roe v. Wade as well. There was about 300 of us that came to it. There's still some pictures and videos of it on Twitter. It was a fantastic day. So why are the trans community heavily invested in this? I guess the first would be that trans men, non-binary people and intersex people are also having their abortion rights stripped away from them as well in America. It's not just a fight for cis women. Some people who may be defined as gender critical or maybe a little bit anti-trans will often use this as an opportunity to sort of divert everyone away from the sort of argument that everyone who needs an abortion should be able to have one, to then argue about, well, what about the identities of trans men and binary people, and then is it valid? And I would really say that sort of diversion of arguments isn't helpful to the overall movement. We need to be inclusive, or else we're just going to spend our time arguing about identities all day and not how everyone that wants to have an abortion should be able to get one. This fight is a women's rights issue, 100%, but it's also an issue for trans brothers, non-binary siblings, and intersex people who deserve to be offered abortions in a private, timely, and safe manner. Another reason why abortion rights is a matter to trans people is about our opponents as well. The Heritage Foundation is an extremely religious right-wing American think tank that has took a leading role in the conservative movement. They came about really at the time of the presidency of Ronald Reagan and has completely steamrolled and is still very much a power player today as well. A lot of people would label them as a hate group. It still doesn't stop BBC Scotland from platforming them as they did recently, which is absolutely shocking because they wanted balance around buffer zones, and it was just absolutely so horrible to seeing the BBC invite around those type of people, those type of politics. The Alliance Defending Freedom, the ADF, or the Heritage Foundation as well, have high profile relationships with gender critical activists like Gary Powell, the founder of the LGBT Alliance, or Kelly J. Keane, or aka Posey Parker. She was behind the sort of the transphobic dog whistle campaign, Adult Human Female. Even Julie Bindel has a high-profile public relationship with Jennifer Lal, who's the founder and president of the Center of Bioethics and Culture Network, which is again another religious right-wing think tank that argues against reproductive technology. Lal has also worked with an organization called Alliance Defending Freedom, which opposes equal marriage, says that queer and trans people are more likely to be pedophiles, and campaigns against women's right to healthcare. So we can see that there is some crossover, but just to double down on this point and really hit it, what about home right here in the UK? Well, gender critical activists have just recently attacked Gillett competency. Gillett competency, for anybody who doesn't know, is allows minors autonomy over healthcare, important healthcare decisions. So that could be the decisions for that child to take testosterone blockers because they think they might be trans, or that child to get a vaccine when their parents don't want it, or if that child is pregnant, they should be able to get an abortion. These are all things that are safeguarded by Gillett competency and has been under attack just because it also provides that mechanism for trans kids to get puberty blockers. So we can see that there's a crossover. I could also talk about Carolyn Fisk, who is head of Women Uniting, a founder of If You Want My Ex, Respect My Sex campaign, a campaign to ask as many politicians as possible, what is a woman? So rather than getting politicians to commit to actual things that would help women, it's about cheesy sort of like, tell us what a woman is, and to try and reduce women down to the fact that the idea that women are just body making machines, that they're just reproduce the next civilization after next civilization, which isn't feminist to me, and any self-respecting feminist should not reduce women down to her reproductive organs as well. Caroline Farrow has also stated that homosexual acts are sinful and that abortion isn't healthcare. Dennis Noel Canva, who set up a gender critical group called the Gay Men's Network, has also said that he prefers AIDS to the activism done by LGBT plus networks like Mermaids and Stonewall. So as well as similar enemies that the trans community, the trans movement and the feminist movement have, we often encounter the exact same arguments against both movements. So for example, if this may have seemed familiar for you, that maybe you're thinking about going and you're getting an abortion, and the arguments that some wankers will come across to you and put it as like, they'll say that, oh, you'll regret it. It does irreversible damage. It's not healthy and it's not healthcare. And on some occasions, you'll be warning that you're condemning your soul to hell. And when that doesn't work and you go away and get your healthcare anyway, like you rightfully should, they'll demonize you, they present you as a predator. You want to take other vulnerable people down the same dark path that you did. If that sounds familiar, all of those arguments are used against abortion, but they're also used against trans people when it comes to surgery and HRT as well. Also in the UK, in order to get an abortion, you need 2 trained professionals, and you need to convince them that you want an abortion. It is somewhat a decision that you make yourself, and it should be, but you need to really double down and convince these doctors that you want it. The only other type of healthcare that really does that in Britain is trans healthcare. You need 2 physicians, and it's not just a case of like simply you going like, right, I know the risks, I know the rewards of it, I want to do this. It is you having to do a dance and play the role that they want you to play. And as Kerry said earlier, that decision should be down to the patient and not the doctor. Scotland also rarely performs abortions way past the first trimester, and often sends a lot of pregnant people down to England, because even though it's legal here, the Scottish government hasn't put the funding in place to allow the abortion up to the legal limit. So that means the exact same sort of situation that we see in Northern Ireland, where Northern Ireland had to send women to England to get an abortion. That's still happening, and it's not just happening there, it's happening in other parts of the UK as well. But this is really all down to the biggest reason why these 2 fights are linked. It is a fight around what we can do to our own bodies. It would make no sense for me as a trans woman to say, well, I should to make all the decisions of if I have surgery, if I have medical interventions, if I have HRT, and these should be all my decisions, and it shouldn't be related to any doctor at all. The buck should stop at me. Then why would I think that someone who needs an abortion shouldn't be able to make their own decision of whether they should have one or not. So I think both of these fights are incredibly linked. You could say that the religious far right are playing a blinder, because for the past 5 to 10 years especially, they've been trying to break up the LGBT community and the feminist movement and try and pit us against each other. They've been trying to say that these are predators in your spaces, and they've been trying to distract us a lot. Even right now to this day, from my organising in Scotland, there are still gender critical activists that have their own civil liberties that are slowly being taken away from them. And still they have been radicalised and given misinformation that no, the true fight at the moment isn't around your reproductive rights. It's about trans women using your spaces and that. So I think really we need to come together, and we need to come together strong and fast, because when we're all united, when we're all to come together, we will start winning, and winning for good. If the case of someone's body autonomy is protected for one group in one part of the world, then that strengthens the overall concept of body autonomy for everyone everywhere. So that's why I see both struggles linked. The fight for body autonomy for trans people is also the fight for body autonomy for cis women. Incredibly important that we are united and that we keep on going, and we defeat this, not just for everything that is happening in America, because unfortunately American politics is global politics and will undoubtedly have an effect on us. But already in Scotland at my local Sandyford clinic, as soon as that potential decision leaked, the religious right randomly in Scotland of all places were just like, right, now's our time to shine. And they became invigorated to protest outside of health clinics. So they definitely feel emboldened, they feel empowered, and it's up to us to stop them in our tracks. What I really, really hope is when Scotland puts buffer zones in place, that will strengthen the case for the rest of the UK to do it soon, because I see no one, although I'll back the right to protest until the cows come home. Hopefully when we pass that in Scotland, and I think it will pass, don't get me wrong, I think the type of religious opposition that we're going to see in the next couple of months is going to be incredibly tough, but we're going to have to ride that out, because I think when we finally get this in Scotland, hopefully the case for getting it everywhere else in the rest of the UK becomes stronger as well, because even though the right to protest is incredibly important, nobody should be harassed or intimidated when trying to just get basic healthcare for anyone. And really, sexual health clinics, they don't only just perform abortions, but a range of care: rape counselling, trans healthcare, menopause healthcare, HIV healthcare. And these are the type of patients that are all being harassed when coming in to get a treatment, and they're classified as murderers of babies. And it's also a trade union issue as well. A lot of our staff are going in, and we often forget that when religious rhetoric, right-wing rhetoric like this gets flung about, it endangers our healthcare staff as well. And there is a long history of not just attacks in America around this, but also here in Scotland as well. So I really hope, even though this is awful, I hope this helps mobilise us and fight back and get some wins, as well as showing solidarity to our American cis sisters, trans brothers, and non-binary siblings.